This week's episode is brought to you by Mediazilla and Wedditor. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John Bunn, and I'm excited to be back yet again with another episode to help you grow your wedding film business. A couple things before we get started with today's episode. I wanted to remind you of our friends over at MusicBed. If you did not know, MusicBed is the premier place to find and license music for your wedding films. Nick and I have been using it exclusively for the past decade plus. It is the best place to find music, and with their new tools like AI search, you can find songs quicker that match the kind of wedding film that you want to create. So head on over to howtofilmweddings.com/musicbed to check out all the promos, including a free trial for their services. Now, today's episode, we brought on the big guns. We brought on Brock Johnson, Instagram growth expert. This guy's been on our podcast before. If you don't follow him online, he is pushing 750,000 followers on his Instagram account right now, and he dives in all the time to what's going on with Instagram, how to grow your account, but also how to grow your business with Instagram. So we dive in. I asked questions that you asked inside of our Facebook group. So I just went through today and I rapid fire asked him as many questions as I could in the amount of time that we had for the episode. So there's a ton of good info in this episode. And without further ado, let's head on over to this week's episode with Brock Johnson. All right, well, welcome back, the one and only Brock Johnson, Instagram growth expert, to the How to Film Weddings podcast. Say hello, maybe a quick intro on who you are if people didn't tune in last time you were on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me back on the podcast. I appreciate it. I definitely am honored by the opportunity to not just be here once, but now twice. For people who don't know me, essentially, the one sentence elevator pitch is it's my job to help people grow and make money on Instagram. So I work with a lot of coaches, small business owners, entrepreneurs, just people who are trying to A, grow their following and reach more people, and B, make money, monetize, sell their product, their service, their offers on Instagram. That's my specialty. I've been doing it for about 8 years now. I've been really lucky to get to work with thousands of people all over the world, speak on stages. I now get to work with Meta on a few different things, which is fun to kind of, peek under the hood and see what's actually going on at Meta. And so I'm really excited to be here today and to get to answer some questions.
Yeah, and I've been following you for a few years now. You've been parts of our workshops. You've talked to some of our groups. You've been on the podcast, and I consistently see the number next to your name growing, but also the content. You're like diving in deep all the time to what Instagram is doing. And as wedding filmmakers, I like having someone at arm's length to be like, hey, what's happening here? What's happening there? Because we're not just focusing on social media. Unfortunately, we can't do that. You get to do that. You're the expert. And so I wanted to bring you on today. I posted a question in our Facebook group saying that you were going to be on, and what questions do people have regarding Instagram? I know there's a lot of updates all the time and, things happening every day, every week, it's different. And so I just thought it'd be cool to just hit you with a few questions. And so I'll start with this first question that says, what is the best way to attract clients in a specific or targeted market? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so that's a tough question. And admittedly, that is the toughest specific kind of clientele to gain on Instagram. I would say besides B2B, like if a business is trying to market to other businesses, tough on Instagram, but like the second toughest is probably people trying to grow within a specific market or area, geographic region. And the reason for that is just that Instagram and all social medias are global. I will say there's first and foremost, the obvious thing is make sure that you're using location tags on all of your posts. So you're tagging the local area. I will say though, while I'm not usually the biggest, fan of and promoter of the use of hashtags, this is one specific use case where hashtags are extremely beneficial, specifically for categorizing your content and making your posts and your page in general searchable. So I would definitely recommend using hashtags that both have your local area, maybe it's your local city or the region that you're in, and also including hashtags that are adjacent. So let me give you an example. If you had, let's say, um, like a nail salon that was in South Orange County, California, you would use not just South Orange County, hashtag Laguna Beach. You would use hashtags that are adjacent, like hashtag Laguna Beach prom, hashtag Laguna Hills prom, hashtag wedding nails Laguna Beach, or something like that, so that you were kind of able to be discovered in those adjacent categories where if someone's looking for prom nails and they're in Laguna area, then they're going to find you as well. So it's going to take some fancy and creative hashtagging, but I think location tagging and hashtagging are the two things I'd recommend the most. And then the third one that I'll throw in there really quickly is if there are other businesses within that local market, make sure that you are super plugged in to that local community. I'll give you an example. Personally, I live in Park City, Utah, and it seems like a lot of the businesses in Park City do a really good job of supporting each other. So if I am following Park City Bagel on Instagram, I'm seeing that Park City Gardens and Park City Cafe and Park City Public Work Meetup area, whatever, they're all interacting together and commenting on each other's pages and following each other. So it's kind of like they're all in this kind of conversation together, and it's really easy to find one on one of the other pages.
Yeah, that's always an interesting thing with it being a global network. Just a quick follow up, just from me. Do you, when creating specific ads, is that something that is another layer that like to target specific ads to show up in a geographic region, or do you recommend against that?
You definitely can. I will say, admittedly, paid marketing strategies is not my forte. It's not my expertise. From what I can understand, the algorithms are getting so good that we, as the people setting the ads and running the ads, are should be doing less and less to like control those algorithms. But of course, if you need people to be booking you in, the tri-state area, well, then that's the only option. You're going to have to limit your ads to only be shown to people in that area. And so, yeah, if that's what you need, then obviously you're going to have to incorporate that into your ad strategy.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Another question that was asked is around, you mentioned AI and different things like that. There's a lot of tools now for AI to generate captions or reels or to auto post. Just in, not necessarily an AI question, but when scheduling posts, the question was, is scheduling posts to auto post a bad idea, a good idea? Have you seen any difference in using that or tools with then they said how to use AI and still be authentic. So just trying to, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, yeah. So big question, but let's kind of break it down into the different pieces. First and foremost, around scheduling. I used to be a firm believer that scheduling your posts would lead to less engagement. However, there have been multiple studies that have come out even recently that have shown that there's basically no difference. There's really, if anything, it's a very, very small decrease in views and engagement when you are using a scheduling tool. But I think that that negative is far outweighed by the positive, which is that when you're using a scheduling tool, it's so much easier to plan in advance, to batch your content, and most importantly, to stay consistent. I used to be flying by the seat of my pants, create content every day, post content that day. It's very stressful. It's overwhelming. It's forcing yourself to create content when you're not feeling creative. That sucks. It's much easier to block out a few hours every week to create and script and edit and whatever, and then you can have it automatically posted the rest of the time. So I will say personally, probably 90 to 95% of my posts are scheduled. Statistically, there is no real change. When I look at my own insights, there is no difference in terms of views and engagement for scheduled posts versus non-scheduled posts. And Instagram has said that they won't penalize you for scheduling your posts. And I also will say one final thing about scheduling. If we want to kind of go deeper into AI, we can. I think that with scheduling, it's much better to post and ghost which means to like post and then not be available to stay engaged or not be available to answer questions, respond to comments, whatever. It's much better to do that than to not post at all. And so that's why I tell people it's better to have a post scheduled to go out every morning at 6:30 in the morning, even if you know you're not necessarily going to be there and ready to engage in that moment. Just plan on maybe later in the day, you're going to go back and check the comments. But then at least you know you have something posted, and it's not a matter of your own memory or your own daily discipline to make sure that you're staying consistent.
Yeah, I like that. And yeah, and digging deeper into the AI side of it, are there any things that you're doing using AI, and any recommendations or thoughts just on should we be using any of these tools as wedding filmmakers?
Yeah. So HubSpot just came out with a survey that was a few weeks ago. They asked over 1,500 social media managers about the performance of their content, their use of AI, and things like that. And 71% of respondents said that their content that used AI in some way performed better than content that was just 100% man-made, human-made. And I think that's very interesting. And what I've found is that if I were to rank in reverse order, 3, 2, 1, what's my best performing content? Third place, last place is my content that is 100% AI, where I just like give these AI tools, ChatGPT, whatever, free reign to create the content. That's not going to perform very well. Second place is the content that is 100% me. First place, my content that is performing the best, which also aligns with that HubSpot survey, is the content where it's a combination of the two. It's me doing the majority of the creative work, maybe coming up with the idea or the script or the topic, whatever, as the human, but then I'm using AI to refine it, make things a little bit punchier, maybe crisp up an edit or clean up something in my caption here or there. And so that's where I've found the best results in using AI. But also every audience is different. Some audiences love AI generated content. Some audiences completely despise it and are totally against it. Some audiences can't recognize something is AI or not. And some audiences have like such keen eyes. So every audience is different. And then also every tool is different, right? There's some tools that are going to make entire videos for you. And then AI on the smallest scale is like, text correction. If you have spelt a word wrong and it's predicting the word that you wanted to spell, that is technically artificial intelligence. And so it's just kind of varying degrees to figure out what's best for each creator.
Yeah. AI is obviously growing and changing every minute. It's probably different since we started this podcast, and there's a new thing out. So you mentioned about like it's better to post and ghost than to not post at all. I think a lot of wedding filmmakers, especially the ones that would lean more towards the artistic side and not the business owner side, this is the internal struggle of, well, I don't want to put something out that's not, really speaking to the artistic creativity of what I do. My question to you, we've heard you say the more you post, the more you grow. I know you're a growth expert. You're trying to should wedding filmmakers be solely focused on growth, and should we be posting? Is it still true? The more you post, the more you grow. What would your mindset be if you were a wedding filmmaker, knowing what you're trying to get 10 to 20 clients a year, maybe 50. The more you post, the more you grow. Is this still true?
So yes, the more you post, the more you grow is still true. And actually, since we've had our last conversation, there have been a few other reports that have come out that have shown the same thing, including Instagram CEO himself saying, we did an internal study and we found that essentially the more you post, the more you grow. So let's start there. Yes, that is still true. However, understanding that wedding filmmakers are essentially an artist, even though, yes, you have a business to run, many of them view themselves first and foremost as an artist. And I'm sure many view themselves as exclusively artists who just happen to want to get paid. And, there's a business on the side, but they're an artist first and foremost. I think that if you can sustainably, using systems, using AI, using tools and teams, whatever, scale up your posting while still holding on to that artistic quality and that level of creation and output that you enjoy and you feel you can really confidently put your stamp of approval on, I think that's a great place to start. However, I don't think that you should stress yourself out with posting 4 times a day, because you want absolute optimal maximum growth, because you don't need a bajillion followers in order to convert 10 to 20, maybe 30, 40 customers per year. I think that there are a lot of businesses that need a really high quantity of customers to be effective. However, as a wedding filmmaker, you don't need 700 customers a year. You don't need 40,000 customers a year. So you don't need that massive influx of quantity. I think it's much more important that you have a quality follower, and not just a quality follower, but a quality relationship with your followers. You have a really strong sense of trust and bond and understanding and connection with your followers. I know that was something for me. I got married about a year and a half ago now. That was something that was really important for my wife and I as we were picking our wedding videographer, our wedding filmer, because we had options, right? Like budget wise, we knew there was a few different people we could work with. Because of my social media following, I knew a few different people who had like offered and reached out and pitched themselves. And so what mattered most to us was the quality of the relationship that we could build with that filmmaker. And so I think that pouring more time, if you're listening to this podcast, I would pour more time into the direct messages and to building those relationships rather than posting a third or fourth time in that day. Set a minimum for yourself of maybe 3, 4, 5 posts a week as a guaranteed baseline. But then from there, I'd pour a lot more time, energy, and effort into the DMs and into networking and into building the trust than I would on creating, 40% more posts.
Yeah, that's a really great answer, and I'm happy you said that, because if you didn't, I was going to just end the podcast. No, I'm kidding. It's a perfect segue into a couple of the next questions. Relationship is really important, and I think a lot of people get so focused on, I need to grow. It's like, what are we growing for? We want that top of funnel awareness, but honestly, we want, the biggest brands in the industry might be a volume brand that has a few hundred clients. Relationship is so important in building trust in something as intimate as a wedding, and filming a wedding. And what we have seen, and I'd love to get your take on it, is the more that we show up as the person in our stories, in our posts, real life moments of us, the more we attract our ideal buyers. And so one of the questions that we were asked is, how important is showing up on your stories, or is sharing your work enough? Do clients connect more with a face than with a brand? What do you have to say to that?
Yes, they do. Clients connect more with a face than with a brand, and especially in the position that you are in. While you might be an elite level artist, filmmaker, you're going to notice all the little things. You're going to notice the little cutting techniques that someone's using, the editing things, the film style, all these different things. You're going to notice something like what camera, what frame rate, what lens was it used to shoot this film. You're going to notice that. But the majority of your average customers are probably not, unless that's like the specific kind of customer that you're trying to attract. Like if you're trying to attract my brother-in-law, then yeah, you need to make sure that you're, hitting all of those bases, because he's going to be aware of that. But most people are not. And so while yes, I'm not saying your artistry doesn't matter and those, minute details don't matter and make a difference, what's ultimately going to make a difference, kind of going back to my previous answer, is the relationships that you're building. And the way that you build relationships on Instagram and on social media, if you're not able to have just like a bajillion one-on-one DMs every single day, is through letting people see the real you. And that starts with just letting them see you, letting them see the person, letting them see the face behind the camera. And your Instagram stories are a great place to do that, because I think, especially in this industry, your feed can kind of operate as like a portfolio. It's going to bring people to your page, but once they look at your account, look at your profile, they're kind of going to browse through your feed posts as, okay, this is an example of this person's work. These are different styles, different videos that this person has recently put out. And then they're going to follow you and go to your stories to learn a little bit more about you. What makes you tick? What are your beliefs? What are your passions? What are your interests, your hobbies, all these different things. And through your Instagram stories, which is where you can get quote unquote off brand, quote unquote off niche, that's how they learn more about you, and that's how they build that trust. And I view it kind of similar to like dating or making a new friend. Like at first, it's going to be very superficial. And it's going to be superficial because they're just looking at your feed. That is superficial. And then they're going to get a little bit deeper by watching your stories. We're not having like a 4 hour long FaceTime or, a long dinner date that goes into the wee hours where we're having deep conversations, but at least they're learning about your interests. I think of like, the early stages of dating where you're asking someone like, what's your favorite music genre? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite movie? Those sorts of little bit deeper questions. They're right below the surface. Those are things that you talk about on your stories to allow people to get to know you a little bit better. And then hopefully eventually it moves into an actual conversation in the direct messages. And that's where it does get a little bit deeper. And that's where over time the trust is really built.
Yeah, I really like that. And as wedding filmmakers, the people that I see that are doing the best with Instagram are the ones where you feel like you know them. Maybe you haven't even met them. So there's, from time to time, there might be footage of them at a wedding mixed in with clips of their wedding or like what I see, what my camera sees or whatever. But in their stories, they're showing up, their bio, everything is pointing towards the brand experience that they want you to have. But then you're like, oh, I care about the fact that they're redoing their house, or I care about whatever the thing is. And you go deeper with those people, and the people that have booked me that follow along my stories and things like that. They are more likely to spend more. They're more likely to trust me because they see more than just a dude with a camera. And so that leads me to kind of the next question / conversation, which would be around, like you said, DMs, automation, things like that. With the invention of ManyChat and it coming out and everything. We want to get people into our inboxes. We want to build relationship. If somebody can send me a DM and say, hey, are you available on this day? I can start to have conversations with them and then point them to my contact and get them off of Instagram and into my inbox. Do you have any, I know you have a relationship with ManyChat. You've done work with them. As wedding filmmakers, as every question, I guess. So ManyChat exists. Do you have any thoughts on how we could be using that if we are trying to get our 30 to 50 clientele in order to get them to take those deeper steps with us?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I want to ask you a question, and it's kind of around the general, let's call it call to action that wedding filmmakers are using to gain clients. If they are using a call to action, is it usually something like, DM me if you're interested, or message me if you want to learn more about my packages? Is it typically something like that?
It's a pretty big market, but like I see a lot of people doing different things. I think that the way that I see it work is that people will see work and then they will just DM that person based on the work. There's not too many of us using calls to action to get them but I think that it's a huge missed opportunity. So that's kind of the context.
Gotcha. Okay, that totally makes sense, and thank you for that. I think that, yeah, first and foremost, you should be using calls to action, even if it's just something that's tucked away in your caption. Just saying things like, DM me if you're interested, message me if you want to, see my availability. Those sorts of things are good step ones. And I shouldn't even say bury them in your caption, because really only about 40% of your viewers on average are going to read your caption, and only about 10% of those people are going to read to the bottom of your caption. So if you're putting a call to action at the bottom of your caption, very few people are going to see it. It's better to put it at the top of the caption, or even, I know filmmakers are going to hate to hear this, slapping it on, a little text box at the end of your video wouldn't be the worst thing, because then at least people are seeing it. But the better thing to do, rather than just using a generic call to action, is to give a specific call to action. So DM me the word rate if you want to know my rates. DM me the word dates. I don't know why I'm deciding to rhyme right now, but DM me the word date if you want to know my availability, so that people have a specific word that they can message you. Because I see in almost every industry people making the same mistake, which is they're making their audience have to think. And you're already asking your audience to act, which is already not what they want to do. They already just want to be passive and keep scrolling. So now you're asking them to act, and think of a question to ask you or how they're going to message you or what's appropriate. Instead, take that part out of it by giving them a specific keyword to mention or a specific word to message you. And then they can do that for a specific reason. If they want to check your availability, find out more about your rates, or your packages, or whatever, and just takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, makes it that much simpler for people who are curious. And then from there, if they have sent you that keyword, you could use a tool like DM automation to immediately respond to them and send them whatever it is that they need. But even if you don't, regardless of if you do or don't, you at least now have that person in your DMs and you can start a conversation. So even if they, they're not even engaged yet, but they're just like curious about what your rates are, what your different packages are, you can now begin that conversation because that one-on-one DM has begun. And now you have an opportunity to just keep talking a little bit and start that deeper level connection.
Yeah, I really like that. I've just, in the last couple of months, started to implement ManyChat into my wedding filmmaking brand and thinking of lead magnets that would be attractive to a couple 6 to 12 months before they're ready to reach out so that they can subscribe to my newsletter. And it's been, dripping in 3 to 4 to 5 email addresses a day, which is nothing crazy, but, I'm putting out specific reels that do attract people to comment the words. And I guess the next thought that I was thinking is we talk a lot about width builders and depth builders on our podcast, and within the wedding film industry, we have a lot of content. Like, our job is to film content, and a lot of it can go viral. I've seen a lot of people post things just to go viral, and they get a crazy amount of followers that they don't want, and then they have to cancel their Instagram. We talk to people about posting width builders that could give people awareness, and then depth builders. And we recommend, to people, a couple of width builders a week, a couple of depth builders. And within those depth builders, that's whenever I might say, hey, this is the number one thing that gets couples frustrated on their wedding day, and it's the timeline, and comment the word timeline and I'll send you a timeline generator or whatever, things like that. Do you find that type of a system is working still in 2024? Do you have any advice on building out some type of a funnel when it comes to getting people into our inboxes, not just when they're looking for a wedding filmmaker, but maybe in the months leading up to it?
Yeah, so many great points to take away from this. I love the idea of a width builder versus a depth builder. I think depending which one you do more is going to depend on what your goal is. If you're in a season of, hey, I need followers, I need eyeballs, I need attention, then maybe you can go, a little bit more width oriented, some posts that are specifically designed to get eyeballs. And just get more eyeballs, possibly even go viral. However, I think that the majority of your posts, pretty much regardless of what season you're in, should be on this depth building orientation where you're really focused on giving value, teaching, educating, and talking to that specific client or customer. I love the examples that you've given around getting people onto your email list. I think the one that you just gave about, the couple's biggest headaches on their wedding day, and it's the timeline. You're going to send a timeline guide. That's very much going to appeal to a wedding filmmaker. If you are someone who's not trying to attract other wedding filmmakers and you're instead trying to attract your ideal client, like the actual couples who are getting married, then maybe you're going to give out a guide about, how to pick your wedding videographer, or a guide to just picking your wedding vendors, or a guide to things to consider when picking your location, just little guides and free things. That's really what all of this boils down to, is free things, freebies, freemiums. They all have different names, but they're all the same thing, essentially, to get someone onto your email list. That's the end goal here, because I don't think there's ever been a business entrepreneurship podcast in the world that hasn't said what I'm about to say, and that is that you don't own your social media followers. You could lose them at any time. And so ultimately, they're only really worth anything if they're actually on your email list. So what we found in our business is the best way to get people onto that email list is to give them free things. And they don't have to be like these super intense things that take you months to build and work on, but just quick little guides and downloads and PDFs and ebooks are great ways to get people to give you their email address. And now you have that person, so you can keep coming back to them, and you can just kind of stay top of mind, even if the algorithms change and they're not seeing your reels anymore.
Yeah, I love all that. I'm glad that I'm not totally messing everything up. So that's good. So moving on past that type of question, I've got a question around the idea of broadcast channels. And I know there's been some recent updates, but for those that are not even familiar with what a broadcast channel is, maybe just a brief what that is. And then someone said, how do I start a broadcast channel? What type of Instagram do I need? I've been struggling with getting this set up. And do I even need one as a wedding filmmaker? So what is this broadcast channel that IG is now talking to us about?
Yeah, well, I think it's awesome. Such a great topic that isn't talked about enough. I think it's one of the most underrated features on all of Instagram. First and foremost, let's start with this baseline. The number one area of Instagram where people spend the majority of their time is the direct messages. It's not watching stories, it's not watching reels, it's not scrolling the explore page. The area of Instagram that gets the biggest chunk of the pie is the DMs. The broadcast channels is essentially a one to many group chat. So I can have a group chat where there's whatever 50 people in it, 50,000 people in it, it doesn't matter. I, as the creator of the channel, can send messages. I can send videos. I can send links, reminders, polls. I can ask open-ended questions and no one can respond. That's the beauty, is it's truly just meant for broadcasting things. And the only real way that people can message in the channel is if you put up a question sticker and you say, ask me questions about my upcoming whatever. And then people can put questions there, but they're not even like public questions that like show up as if they're new messages. That's the only way people can respond. So it's a really, really powerful tool for getting messages out there, and getting people to see what you have to say and what you're promoting. So very, very useful. In order to start one, off the top of my head, let's see if I can remember how to do this. You go to your DMs, you tap on the little button in the upper right-hand corner that kind of looks like a pencil writing on a page. And that's like the new message button. And then you should see one that says like new message, or create a channel or create a broadcast channel, something like that. And that's how you create one. I could be wrong about what I'm about to say, but I believe both creators and business accounts can create broadcast channels. I don't think it has to be one or the other. And I say that because I know people who are both who have broadcast channels, but I could be wrong about that specific qualification. I will say it's not available in all countries yet. It's not available to all people yet. They're still working on rolling it out because it's only been around for, I would say, less than a year now, broadcast channels. So not everyone has them yet. If you don't, you got to just be patient. It sucks. Not everyone gets the same features at the same time. But once you do get a broadcast channel, they are very useful because it's just another way to make sure that people are seeing your content, that they're seeing what you post, that they're getting updates on whatever it is that you want to update them on. And then in terms of what you send in the channel, I think the biggest mistake that I see is people are only using their broadcast channels as another self-promotion channel. So they're using it to either just send all their reels and their posts. So every time they post, they just send in the channel. They're like, hey guys, new post, go check it out. That's not the purpose of a broadcast channel. It's not meant to just be another way to get reminded of your new post. That's not why someone would want to stay. Or the other self-promotion is they're just using their broadcast channels for sale, launch, promotion, discount, offer, sale. And it just gets like no one wants to be in a broadcast channel that's just full of advertisements. So the way I do it is probably 80% of the time I'm giving a tip or a recommendation, or I'm asking a question, I'm doing a poll, I'm giving little tidbits of advice to my audience. And then every once in a while, maybe once or twice a week, I'll say, hey, I have this free download for you, or hey, I have this guide, or hey, I'm going live over on this channel on TikTok at 3 p.m. today. Go check it out. Things like that, where it's still going to be useful for my audience, but it's also going to have a direct business benefit for me. So yeah, broadcast channels are absolutely awesome. They show up on your profile as like a little clickable button, which really encourages people to join. Super underrated for sure.
Yeah, I'm a part of several, and I know that they've just updated a handful of things. Just being able to put your own background, your own skin, QR codes, there's a bunch of stuff going on over there. So I was going to ask you as we kind of wrap up here today with the questions before we hit record. A couple. You said there was a couple of new releases that are happening that you're seeing in Instagram. What are you seeing out there as you're doing your research? Anything new that's going on with Instagram that we should be paying attention to, or any advice for us as wedding filmmakers with these new releases?
Yeah. So there's quite a few and there's new ones all the time. So I know you just mentioned the broadcast channel one, which is, customizable backgrounds, QR codes so that people in a public location could scan the QR code, which if I'm thinking this through, maybe if there's like people who you're meeting in person, or if you have like an expo, or if you have like, if you're even at a wedding and you just have like a little keychain with your QR code on it, people can scan that and get right into your broadcast channel. There might be some creative ways that you could use that there. Um, but also now you can go live within broadcast channels. That's the other new news about broadcast channels, which is a pretty cool feature, kind of like an exclusive live. But other new changes that are happening on Instagram, the biggest one that made a lot of news that is still kind of yet to be seen how it will actually be implemented is what's called Meta Verified Business. So Meta Verified rolled out about a year and a half ago now. And that was where people could pay to get the blue check if they were a creator. Now, Instagram, Meta, Facebook are rolling out a new tiered subscription model where businesses, people who have business accounts, really, are going to be able to pay to be a part of Meta Verified. They can pay as little as $15 a month, all the way up to 300, I think 350 a month, or maybe it's $300 a month, which is crazy. It's a lot of money. For majority of people. But as you pay more, as you move up in tiers, there's also additional benefits where the highest tier includes like a semi-annual profile review by Meta and their team or whatever, where they're gonna walk through your profile and tell you ways you could optimize it. You're gonna be a quote unquote featured account, which means that there's gonna be a little section in the feed where your profile is going to be visible with a couple other profiles, and people can basically be recommended your profile. And if you're paying the top tier, you're going to be the most featured in the feed. A lot of people are really concerned about, is this going to be pay to play? Does this mean that, if you're paying for this top tier, you're going to be shown more in the feed, like your reels are going to be shown more? I don't think so. And according to the conversations I've had with Meta, they say no. They say that this is not a plan to directly give people more views, but we'll see. So kind of the long and short of this is we'll see. There's a lot of changes, a lot yet to be seen with the Meta Verified program. There's also an ongoing bug, which is something I just found out about yesterday. Someone did kind of some deep dive, and they sent me a bunch of screenshots and backed all this up, where essentially there's a bug that Instagram is aware of. The developers are aware of this, and it's causing your reels to be flagged essentially and not shown to non-followers. So if anyone is like scrolling through all of their recent reels and they're seeing that, the little pie chart that they show you is 99% of your reach is going to followers, 99% of your reach is going to followers, 98% of your reach only to followers, and you're reaching very, very few non-followers, it could be not that you're necessarily doing something wrong, but just that there is this glitch, this bug inside Instagram system causing these posts to essentially be marked down and not shown to new followers. And so at least Instagram is aware of this. They're working on it. And hopefully, maybe even by the time that this podcast airs, this bug has already been fixed and people are back to normal. But the long and short of it is this: just keep posting, just keep sharing content, just keep showing up consistently. There are so many things that are outside of our control, and focusing on them ultimately takes our energy away from the things that we are best at and the things that we are uniquely gifted, skilled, and talented to do. So just keep posting, keep showing up consistently, control what you can control. And at the end of the day, the people who can make good content are going to win. Instagram would not be able to keep itself running as a business if all they did was show content from people who were paying for it. That would not be a very good business model, because all of us as consumers would be like, I don't want this crap. I don't want just a bunch of ads. Goodbye. And it wouldn't last long. So at the end of the day, it behooves Instagram to show the content that is the best, to show the content that is the most creative and unique and original and engaging. And so keep creating that content and you'll win.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, like I said at the top of the hour, we have a lot of different hats we're wearing and we have a lot of different things that we're doing. And I know that you spend all of your time helping us creators do a better job at growing, putting together strategies, putting together consistency, helping us to be consistent. And I'd love for you to take just a few seconds to talk about a couple of the things that you do, that you're offering, that might help us as wedding filmmakers.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you for that. The first thing I would say is if you're kind of just new to this world and still trying to get things figured out, I would recommend following me, Brock 11 Johnson. I'm on every platform. Instagram's, the best platform where I put out the most content, and you're going to get tons of free tips and recommendations and ideas. If you're ready to kind of move up a level, then I have tons of free resources available for one's 100 real ideas, one's 50 stories, one's 55 stories that help you sell, 25 hook ideas, 30 broadcast channel prompts, 20 ChatGPT. Like we have all these free ideas and free recommendations and guides. You can find those in my link in my bio or in my highlights. And then the ultimate level, kind of the final stage, the third step, is we have a club called the Insta Club Hub, which I can actually say this now. We've been working on it for about 8 months. We now have a custom content calendar delivered monthly for every single member of the club at no additional charge. So every single month we send out 30 days of post ideas and stories and reels, and they're all totally specific to you and your unique circumstances and niche and whatnot. So I'm really, really excited that I get to say that on this podcast. This is actually the first time I'm saying it publicly. But the Insta Club Hub is where we do all of our coaching. It's where every training I've ever done is, every template, all of that is available inside the club.
Yeah, I love all of that. And it is a very, the content itself is going to help you. And the thing that I love about it, and we talk about this a lot, on the podcast, is because we're wearing so many hats, maybe you're out there and you do want to spend 20, 30, 40 hours a week digging into Instagram and what makes it tick and how to do all the things. Or maybe you're someone like me that says, I need a who in my life. I need who can help me, who's focusing on that. I don't want to do my taxes. I want somebody that's focusing on taxes. And that's where you come in and your team comes in, or teams like yours. And that's why we want to have you on the podcast, because if you're struggling with your Instagram, if you're struggling with your content strategy, your plans, the Insta Club Hub, or just following, I follow Brock and have for couple of years now, and I'm sending your videos, DMs to Nick, the co-host of the podcast, all the time, like, hey, Brock just posted this is something we need to be thinking about. So that's a great place to start. And I know that you have a million other things you could be doing, so I just want to say thank you from the community for being on today. Thanks so much. And I guess I have to say goodbye at this point, but it was so good to see you, man.
Good seeing you too, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Again, thank you, Brock, for being on the podcast today. Do yourself a favor. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, head over to Instagram.com/Brock11Johnson. That's Brock11 Johnson. Give him a follow, see what he's up to, grab his freebies. He is a wealth of knowledge that can help you grow your business. And before signing off today, I wanted to remind you that Nick and I have opened up howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship. This is a place where you can go to grab a one-on-one Zoom call with either Nick or myself, where we can dig in for an hour with your business. Look at where you're struggling. Look at your wedding films. Look at your brand. Look at how your sales process is working. And what we can do is we can help shave months or even years of time off of the learning curve for your business by just giving you an outside perspective. So we have a few spots left for this month. If you want to check it out, go to howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you.